alongside Jacob Young and Dustin Cooley, I'm John Mosho, and welcome to this week's episode of the Red Fox Roundup, where we go full circle on the sports and news of the week. Tonight we'll be talking about college basketball, the Super Bowl, Marist Athletics, and other news in the sporting world. So let's just get right into it. So what do you have for us today, Dustin?
Well, as far as NCAA basketball goes, I like to look at the Louisville, North Carolina game where number 19 Louisville managed to upset number 2 North Carolina, something I'm sure a lot of people didn't see coming because that's such a disparity in terms of ranking. It was a fairly close game, 71-65 the whole way. Towards the end, it kind of went more in Louisville's favor. They really kind of just clamped down and took control of the game. What really stood out to me personally was the shooting in this. You know, North Carolina, they really were just behind when it came to shooting. They only shot 34.5% on the game, while Louisville shot 43.3%. Louisville shot 36% on their threes, whereas North Carolina only shot 16%, which is just god-awful for anybody. The only shooting statistic that North Carolina actually managed to come ahead on was free throw shooting at 76% compared to 67%, and they shot less free throws, so that's kind of the only way they really did better to me. You know, UNC is really has a good build for their team because they're not reliant on one scorer like a lot of teams build their team around one star. So I like how their team is built, but in this case, multiple players did not play up to their usual self, and they really faltered because of it.
Yeah, which is a shame because UNC usually plays such prolific basketball, and it's kind of upsetting to see that they didn't really, they stayed within their three-point shooting range even though it wasn't working. But transitioning over to Jacob, I know you covered the Purdue-Michigan State game, which was really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Dustin mentioned an upset. I'm going to mention another one right here. The Purdue Boilermakers at number 18 in the country took down the Spartans of Michigan State 82-81 in overtime. The Boilermakers were actually leading by 16 at halftime, but Michigan State has that offense with Denzel Valentine that got them back into the game, got them back late. They were able to tie it, send it into overtime. That's where Denzel did his thing once again. He had 27, 8 rebounds, 10 assists. He took it to the hole with a few seconds left. He got a bucket to tie it. Then on the inbounding pass, he actually fouled the guy who was able to hit the go-ahead free throw, and Purdue took it. But although it's an upset, Michigan State's been doing well all year, especially Valentine. He's averaging toward a triple-double, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. He'll definitely be in Naismith contention.
Yeah, gotta love a guy that can do it all.
Yeah, he's really able to drive to the hoop, dish it out. He can do it all, hit contested shots.
Yeah. So now that we're getting so close to the end of the NCAA season and March Madness is quickly approaching, what do you guys feel are the hot teams right now? What are your predictions going into the tournament, and who do you think's gonna, as of right now, lead the tables? So let's start with Jacob this time.
Well, taking into account all the upsets of top-ranked teams, there's been 27 upsets of top 5 teams this season. It's really hard to predict who's going to be top seeds, who can really make a run, especially in the tournament when you have to make a run of 6 wins. It's going to be tough for any team. But when I look at higher-ranked seeds, I like the consistency of Oklahoma and Kansas always. Bill Self, he doesn't seem to lose at home ever. Those are definitely going to be top contenders. Oklahoma with Buddy Hield, another Naismith contender. But anything's possible in March Madness. That's why it gets its name, because you never know who's going to upset who, and it's always crazy.
You know, I like your thinking. If you know me, you know I always bet on Kansas. I love Kansas. I have loved them ever since I watched them about 4 years ago in a game against Missouri where they really took over at the end of the game, and ever since I've just stuck with them. They've always been a very good team. They're right now ranked, I believe it's 6 overall in the country, so not quite at the top, but I still believe in them very much. They got a lot of great players. Definitely going to be lottery picks in the NBA when they're ready to go. And I'm pretty confident they're going to make it to at least the Final Four. I haven't seen enough from them yet to say that they're going to win it all, but they're definitely going to be a finalist team as far as I'm concerned. And the other team that I like to look at, who is also having a bad year, actually a really bad year considering their standards, is the Kentucky Wildcats. We know that they're known as one of the top college basketball teams in the nation, and they're just playing horribly this year. They are ranked pretty bad, but I actually see them coming through and making a good run. They had a good game against Kansas, which honestly kind of did really win me over, and I see them making an okay, good run for them considering their ranking, but they're still going to get knocked out middle to early as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I don't think you can ever doubt Calipari. I think
You
just
can't.
as a coach, He's phenomenal. Class act, potentially going to the NBA relatively soon if he finds the right contract in the right place. But realistically, Kentucky's just always going to be there as long as he's a coach and he's able to recruit the players that he wants to recruit. But that was our take on men's college basketball in the NCAA tournament. And when we come back, we'll be recapping the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning's career and the funniest commercials that aired. Welcome back. After an underwhelming Super Bowl, what did you guys really take away from that Carolina Broncos game? So let's start with Jacob this time.
Well, it's hard to really know where to start. You got the dominating Broncos defense, the underperforming Panthers, Cam Newton's post-game conference, Peyton Manning's retirement. I mean, it's hard to know where to start. Yep, potentially. Well, I guess as a whole, the game was definitely underwhelming, I think. The Broncos defense was certainly dominant in the sense of getting to Cam Newton, forcing him to try to use his arm, Von Miller's 2 strip fumbles, Cam Newton potentially not giving enough effort to dive in to get the fumble. I mean,
It was over at that point.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
yeah, you can't really discount his courage taking into account all season where he risked his body and, he had the reason of being at a bad angle. So it's hard to tell, but you can't really say he didn't give effort.
But to take the opposite side of that, this is the Super Bowl. This is the biggest game of his career. Shouldn't he have dove on that ball? I mean, granted, he's a quarterback. You don't want your premier franchise player to get injured. But with that said, he had the opportunity to dive on the ball, and he shied away from that. Can't you judge his character on that a little bit and basically say that he doesn't have that clutch factor that some other quarterbacks might have, or he doesn't have he has a lack or a sense of just really not being able to produce in the highest level?
I don't know if you could say that. Really, like I said, the game was really over at that point. Everybody knew it. I think Cam, saw that happen, and when it did happen, I was a bit like, oh, why didn't you do that? But then it sunk in. It's like he's probably demoralized at this point. He knows we're just playing to, maybe look good in the end. And when he saw it, he's just like, just finish it off. Just, last blow. Just take the ball. That's it.
Yeah, even if he did get that fumble, there's 3 minutes left on the clock. If you punt it to the Broncos, you might be able to stop them like they have been most of the game. But there's still a score away. It's tough to tell what would have happened. Nobody will know what was going to happen, but you could definitely tell that Cam was demoralized. When he fell to the ground on the sideline and he flipped out over a no roughing the passer call, he was really frazzled the whole game.
Yeah. So to transition from the spoils to the victors, now we have Peyton Manning, and basically he's contemplating, does he retire as a Super Bowl champion? There's supposedly offers that the LA Rams are now going to be interested in signing him. What should Peyton Manning do at this point in his career, and do you believe he could still be a quality quarterback in the NFL?
I mean, he could definitely still be a quality quarterback in the NFL, but I really don't think he should. He needs to retire. It's in his best interest. First off, it's very, very difficult to go out as a Super Bowl champion. Not a lot of guys get to do it. Certainly not a lot of the Hall of Famers get to do it. And another big point to it, to me, why he should back out is because the Al Jazeera investigation, because it kind of got pushed under the rug after it first came out that Manning allegedly was using PEDs. And it finally, the NFL is now investigating it. They just started right before the Super Bowl, which, to be honest, I find a little suspicious that they didn't do it way before when it first came out.
What if that was Tom Brady?
That's the thing. When I saw that and there was nothing to happen, I said, if it was Tom Brady, they would have vilified him and said he's the guiltiest guy ever. When Peyton does it, he's okay. So if he retires and this PED thing comes out, then I think he's going to be hurt less by it because he's really less in the public limelight, whereas he comes back. First off, I don't think the Broncos are going to be 100% guaranteed to bring him back because they got Brock Osweiler, who showed a lot of promise. Maybe the LA Rams, I don't see them as a contender, so I don't know if he'd want to go there, but he really should retire.
So, Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, taking into account the PED aspect of it, he actually said he was going to be in full cooperation with the NFL investigation, so it really shows that he doesn't think he has anything to worry about, but it is strange that it is really taking off right after the Super Bowl. But from a retirement standpoint, the obvious answer is, of course, he should retire. He has legacy of one of the best quarterbacks of our time and all time. So, yeah, this is definitely time to go for him, I think.
So you've heard it from us. You've heard it from Peyton's mom. Peyton, it's time for you to retire, all right? You better listen to us. But next, we kind of would like to discuss a little bit of the commercials, fun atmosphere sort of thing. What were some of your favorites? What were some of your least favorites? Just some opinions in general.
I had a couple of commercials I really liked, a couple I really hated in this. Typically, you got to watch for the commercials. Even if you're not a football fan, there's always something good to watch in the commercials.
Of course.
In terms of what I loved, my top 3 for me was the Heinz commercial where they had the dachshund puppies dressed as wiener dogs.
Adorable.
You have to love it. There's always
Adorable.
commercials with puppies. Then I had the T-Mobile commercial with Steve Harvey where they took a shot at the Verizon commercial that was very similar, criticizing T-Mobile's coverage, which I don't think is good, but it was still a good commercial. And then I liked the Avocados in Space commercial where they got a tour of, not our best points in history. And in terms of commercials I hated, I actually have to look at my notes to remember the order of this. The Puppy Monkey Baby commercial by Mountain Dew.
Ooh, I'm going to argue that on that commercial, but we'll save that for later.
I
Jacob, what are your thoughts?
Looking at the ones that I liked, I was happy with the Doritos output actually this year with both the ultrasound commercial and the dog commercial. In years past, I definitely liked the ones with the swinging baby and then the one where the guy was punctured with a Dorito in the neck. And then this year again with the dog dressed up as human and then the ultrasound, the baby reaching for the Dorito.
Mm-hmm. So, see, I'm going to have to disagree with you because my least favorite commercial was probably the dog Dorito commercial because Doritos has such a successful franchise for campaigns and advertising that I was really disappointed by that. I thought it was just pretty bland and not unique. And my favorite might have been the Puppy Monkey Baby, just simply because it was so ridiculous, so stupid that it attracted attention. And you know what? Maybe I might drink a Kickstarter now. Probably not. Bad for you. Gonna die from drinking it. Maybe. Not true. Whatever.
It didn't make any sense.
It was weird, but that's why you gotta love it. But that wraps up everything for the Super Bowl. And when we come back, we'll be talking about Mariners men's and women's basketball and their contrasting seasons. Welcome back, and let's start things off by entering the Fox Den, and let's go initially with a men's basketball story. So, basically, men's basketball this year has been very, very dismal, we'd have to say. They're currently last on the MAC. Lost by, must have been 20 points to Monmouth yesterday. Pretty pitiful effort, but Monmouth, I don't know if you guys saw the game, but they were draining threes. But this team's really relying on Khalid Hart, the junior, the outstanding junior, just seems to make every clutch shot. But what's interesting is some of the players that they expected to rise up the ranks for this season, like KJ Lee and other sophomores, maybe you could even consider Obi as another player, they really haven't stepped it up and are relying heavily on Brian Parker and Isaiah Lamb, who have shown some promise. I'm still skeptical as to whether or not the system that Marist basketball is currently playing fits Parker's style, but either way, they've shown some promise, and I'd kind of like to hear what your thoughts are. So let's start it with Jacob.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Looking at their record, they've been struggling all around. They did get the solid win the other day against Siena, who was ranked 3rd in the MAC, but it doesn't really account for the rest of their season. Their play has been mostly revolved around the three-point game, and it's been struggling, taking into account the shooters they have that are expected to rise up with their shooting. Kristen Paulson, Isaiah Lamb, Brian Parker, and Khalid Hart. Khalid Hart, he's around a 40% three-point shooter, which is rather good, but the rest of the three-point game is rather struggling.
Yeah. And with struggling games, you can't forget about Ryan Funk as well, another freshman that seems to get pretty quality minutes off the bench and still struggles to make threes as well.
You guys talked about Khalid Hart. I would like to go a bit more in depth on him. He's been the go-to scorer for this team since Kavanaugh Lewis has gone, averaging, I believe it's 22 points a game about that. That's really good. And he's, like you said, had a great shooting percentage, which is phenomenal, but considering he's basically the star of this team, they don't have a ton of other talent. They do need more from him. Right now, he's only averaging about 2 assists a game. That's really not that impressive to me. I understand he's relied on to score, so it's kind of hard to get assists to other guys when you need to shoot the ball. And he's got a pretty low rebounding rate, but he's only 6'2", so I give him a pass on that. But what's pretty bad for me is his turnover rate. He does have about 1.5 steals, which isn't bad. But other than him and Brian Parker, they don't have a ton going for them right now.
Either way, I'd say for a very disappointing Marist season, I think possibly, or Marist men's basketball season, that is, I think possibly the most disappointing thing was I didn't get to see the Monmouth bench go nuts yesterday. That's all I wanted to see, but that was kind of upsetting. So next time, Monmouth, when you come to the Fox Den, step it up with your bench because that was a little upsetting. But as I digressed, let's get into the women's basketball team. Clearly, they're the best in the MAC. Kind of funny how that works. But Tori Jarose is killing it, and they were on an 8-game winning streak up until last game where, unfortunately, she caught a virus and was not able to play, and they unfortunately lost. But they've had great production from Sydney Coffey yet again. They've had fantastic production from a freshman, Claire Oberdorf, who was a walk-on to the team, who killed it the other day with 18 points, and to make things even more interesting, she's a double varsity athlete here at Marist, which is pretty cool, pretty unique, and kind of unusual. So props out to Claire Oberdorf. But what do you think about the women's team, Dustin?
The women's team is something I actually like to watch because, let's be honest, they're the good team here.
Of course.
They're the team that can actually make the NCAA tournament every year. Like you said, Jarose has been the absolute anchor to this team. She has been the best they've got on both offense and defense. She has been a phenomenal presence in the post on defense. She's a tremendous shot blocker. It's kind of amazing to me that she's able to be a great shot blocker at only 6'3", which kind of speaks to the height you usually see in women's basketball. It's just a little bit odd to me. She's a great low post scoring option, averaging about 18 points a game. And she's got a lot of great experience because she's a 6-year senior, so she's a lot more mature.
A lot of people have slight issues with that 6-year senior thing as well, so it's kind of just interesting how she was able to get her eligibility. But thankfully she did because she's killer. But what are your thoughts, Jacob?
Yeah, you guys said it best. It's definitely two ends of the spectrum with these two basketball teams. Like you mentioned, Jarose has been dominant. She became Marist's all-time lead blocker. She had multiple MAC Player of the Week awards, and Sydney Coffey, Claire Oberdorf. They're definitely consistent in contributing some points, around 14 points a game for Coffey. It's pretty good, and they can definitely shoot the 3-ball too, and everything's clicking for the women.
Georgia's team is one to watch for yet again this season. He keeps doing it even when everyone else around thinks that Marist women's basketball might not be that great this year. So Joe Radin, John Scott, and Blake Griffin are all coming up after the break, so stay with us here on the Red Fox Roundup. Welcome back. In other Marist news, senior lacrosse attacker Joe Radin has been drafted by the Charlotte Hounds. Guys, let's discuss this. Let's start with Dustin.
I've only got a little bit. It's a very nice story to see someone from Marist get drafted when it comes to any sport, because let's be honest, we don't have a ton of people going to the pros. He got drafted, I believe it was 45th overall in the 6th round, which is, it's okay. It's not the best, but it is very nice. I actually do have an interesting fact. His cousin is actually a neighbor of mine.
Cool. Very cool. What are your thoughts?
Radin's moving up the boards for Marist all-time stats, points, goals, assists, everything. And he's actually in one of my classes this semester, so I might get to know him a little better, so that's pretty cool.
Wow, you guys have such a personal connection. All that I know is congrats to you, and Terrence Fede, I'm looking for you to still make something with the Dolphins. Let's see if that happens. And up next, we're going to touch on John Scott and his All-Star appearance. What do you guys think? Should he be on the roster or not?
In terms of talent, no. He's a man of the people. The fans voted him in. He, talent-wise, doesn't deserve to be in the All-Star game, let's be honest. But I did like having him there. The All-Star game is supposed to be something fun. It's, a break from the regular action, and this is definitely something to get views. The guy who's bouncing in and out of the NHL and the AHL gets into the All-Star game, and he scores twice and gets, in a fight, if you want to call it that, with Patrick Kane. So he got his nice spotlight. He's a good role model, a good family man. He's about to have twins, so he'll have 4 kids in total. And he's maybe going to be a chemistry guy. I could see bouncing around teams, maybe a Tim Tebow kind of thing.
He definitely seems like a character. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was definitely a surprising story. I was actually more intrigued by how the NHL All-Star Game format has changed with the 4-team, 3-on-3 format. It definitely picks up the pace, but I thought it was really strange how they changed it like that.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I like the guy. He seems pretty cool. His Players Tribune article, spot on. You know what? Let's give him a chance. He liked his gloves so much, if you read the article, so I'm happy for him. He deserves the chance to kind of just make a name for himself, and honestly, everybody deserves the limelight here and there, so why not give it to a good guy? But next, let's touch on the Blake Griffin trade rumors. What are your thoughts?
I mean, Blake Griffin, in my opinion, he's got to go at this point with the Clippers. They have been so great without him. I mean, how dumb can you be to break your hand and require 2 surgeries by punching your own team's equipment manager, for God's sakes? And you're gone and your team is doing better. That just shows how much of an impact you have chemistry-wise. So they got to move him. I see maybe potential trades of Carmelo Anthony straight up, maybe Paul George straight up. You could also maybe move him for Al Horford for some parts, but I see that a little bit trickier just because they've already got a center in DeAndre Jordan, and Horford maybe not needed as much.
Yeah, Jacob?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Dustin on all about Blake Griffin. I wanted to move over to the firing of Derek Fisher by the Knicks. Didn't really come as too much of a surprise, taking into account his record thus far at 23-31 and a 9 out of 10 game losing record in the last 10 games. But I thought it was interesting how it was actually Phil Jackson, his former coach of 5 NBA championships, that was actually responsible for his firing. But he lasted a couple seasons and it didn't really work out, so it's time to move on in New York.
And what are your thoughts on the whole George Carlson debacle?
Yeah, I think he's the active coach leader in wins ahead of Greg Popovich, so it's really hard to fire someone like that, but it didn't end up happening, so rumors were just false in the end, and he's staying in Sacramento.
I mean, it's a lot of rumors. It's been said previously that he's going to be fired. Now he actually was fired, and then they unfired him, so it could happen again. They really need to choose whether they're going to keep him or star player DeMarcus Cousins at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, just going back to Blake Griffin, you got a franchise player. You have to keep him and find ways to work around him. I don't know if you need a culture change. Doc Rivers, fantastic coach, but if he's not reaching out to your franchise players, maybe it's time to move on there. As for the coaching situation, I think the Derek Fisher firing was probably just, and maybe the Knicks might look into Tom Thibodeau to take his place. Bulls' former head coach, very strong coach, and deserves a spot in the NBA. So even though he doesn't run the triangle offense, maybe Phil Jackson will take a chance on him. And as for George Carlson, realistically, he should be a coach as well. So I'm happy that they're giving him another chance to continue their franchise and move forward. So that's all we have for this segment, and stay tuned for next week. Same time, same place, here on the Red Fox Roundup. I really appreciate Dustin Cooley here by my side, as well as Jacob Young. And as for myself, I'm John Mosho, and stay classy, boys.